And welcome to this week's edition of The Public Square. I'm Wayne Shepherd here with the team. Dave Zanotti, Alan C. Duncan, our producer, and on mic, Melanie Elsey is here, Jeff Sanders, and Rob Walgate. Now you've done it, Dave. You've got me subscribing to the Washington Post. Although I don't agree with so much that's in the Post, but you got me subscribing now. So there you go.
Is that as big a shock to everyone around the table as it is to me?
Actually, I've been a subscriber for a while.
You've been a subscriber for a while. Okay. Everybody else knew this and I didn't?
I didn't know it, but I figured you were the reason for it.
Well, I have family in D.C., so yeah. But you've got something good to say about the Post today?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know what to say about the Post today. I came across this particular piece and I thought, well, everybody's got to look at this and get a read on it. It's and of course, Washington Post has lots of guest contributors and op-ed pieces on their editorial pages, but every now and then they come up with an opinion, which is the consensus of the editorial board. So this is in essence what the newspaper is saying they believe, and this is their position where they stand. I think it's also important for people to know that the Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos, who owns Amazon.
Yes,
and that's just a matter of full disclosure. So the title of the editorial is Why Americans Are Having Fewer Kids and Why It Could Be a Problem. Now, they had me at the title.
Well, I don't know. I just thought about it. Well, it might be.
Yeah. Why it could be a problem. Because, and of course, I had to read further because instantly I thought to myself, wait a second, we've been doing research on this topic for several years. We've talked about this on the Public Square on a regular basis. We've published on it. We've had lots of conversations. We've brought it into many different forums of public policy. So I had never heard anybody come up with the could be a problem. I thought, well, maybe they've got the answer. Maybe that's just a very...
Maybe they're subscribing to us.
That's it.
They could be listening. I actually did think that. I don't know. You never know.
Bezos is our number one fan. Yes.
So I read anxiously looking to see what the could be would be. And I just submit this to the table. You all tell me, did you find a way out of the population mess after reading this piece?
Still waiting for the part where they say, have lots of children. That's the way out. Can't really see anybody saying that.
See, I thought I was going to be happy when I was reading this, and then I wasn't. I told you all that I felt like I wanted to throw my computer out the window multiple times while I was reading this article. And this kind of gets to Jeff's point. They launch into all these different studies and stats, which is great. They talk about why people don't have kids, maybe this or that. But they never say that having children is an actual good. Doesn't mean everyone has to have kids. There are people who have infertility issues. There are people who are not married. But they never say that having children is a good in and of itself, self-evidently. They want to prove it economically. They want to talk about the future. But they don't just want to say it's good.
It's like children are a burden or a commodity.
Yeah.
But they or a disease, but they are not life-fulfilling humans who bring meaning and purpose to your life.
Yeah.
They can't say that.
Well, let's be fair to our listeners, and let's take a minute and read a little of this because now that you've got the setup, Sherry Eisen noted quickly when she read this on our team that they start off in a rather Shakespearean format. To have children or not to have them? That is the question. No, sorry. Right. To have children or not have them? That is the question.
That is the question. They do it.
Yeah, they do it. To have children or not have them, that is the question more and more Americans are asking themselves. Only 26% say having children is extremely or very important for a fulfilling life. According to a Pew Research Center survey, whereas 71% say the same about having a job or career they enjoy. The U.S. fertility rate has plummeted to 1.6 lifetime births per woman, well below the replacement rate of around 2.1, at which point a population remains stable between generations. So this is the setup. They recognize that what we've been noticing and others have noticed around the world is that the United States population rate is not just a little below replacement, it's way below replacement and has been consistently there for decades. And that means we're playing the game with the math, which is like playing it's not even like playing a game of Russian roulette. There's an inevitability of the math of all this that China is now experiencing and acknowledging and out loud, as we talked about on this program a couple of weeks ago. The United States is right in the same boat. And it looked like WAPO was about to join in the conversation and say, it's okay. We see it now. We all see it. We have a problem. I wonder why we have the problem. But nobody got that satisfaction out of this op-ed. How come?
I think they put too much emphasis on the sort of the social emotional piece or perspective, because they're talking frequently in this article about the convenience or lack of convenience in having children.
Yeah, it's not convenient. Newsflash, it's not. Okay,
Right,
move on.
Right. But
Next.
And they never are.
But even in context, it's still, when I one comment I made earlier today was that my perspective is children are not just for consideration when they're children. They're still our children when they're adults. And so not having children means that the two individuals who could have had children and chose not to are short-sighted in that they're shooting themselves in the foot for when they're older. I'm in the older generation now, and our children are a huge blessing. I mean, we don't have a large family, but we have a medium-sized family. We have 3 children, and even just the fact that we're fortunate enough that they live fairly close to us, and we have access to one another, and we do family things together, that's one thing. But as we get older and less healthy, they are very helpful. And so,
Right.
Looking at that end of life, that's not even covered in this article.
Let's go on with the article, with the editorial. Lower birth rates mean fewer young people, which means a shrinking workforce and more difficult economic growth. But there are other reasons to hope for more children, no less real for being more intangible. Okay, you got me.
What does that mean?
That means children are good, but they just won't say it.
Let me continue. Mass reluctance to bring a new generation into the admittedly troubled world could signify growing pessimism in a society that has historically thrived on optimism. A disproportionately elderly society could be a wiser but less dynamic one, with fewer young people to take risks, contribute new ideas, and yes, provide youthful, and then they use some French term, and I have no idea what it means. Okay. The declining birth rate is puzzling, given that being married with children correlates with self-reported happiness. Among both men and women, nearly 40% of women who are married with children say they are very happy, according to the 2022 General Social Survey. It's just 25% for those married without children, and even lower for those who are unmarried, either with or without children. Meanwhile, 35% of married men with children report being happy, compared with 14% of unmarried, childless men.
That's the most boring paragraph possibly ever penned. Just stat after stat after stat.
You boil all of mankind
It is,
down
but
to
the
stat.
frustrating part when you read that is when they say that few people are very happy. We live in the most materialistic
Right on.
society in the world.
Affluent.
Amazon owns this paper.
We have
Let's remember.
everything at our fingertips, and that's all the amount of people that say they're very. My heart breaks for those people. That makes me sad that they're not happy at all in the world in which they live.
But they're only unhappy for that moment in the survey. Does that mean that they're unhappy all the time? I was unhappy when I had 4 kids living at the home. I was unhappy at least one day out of the year.
I was unhappy when I was reading this article. Does that count?
Yeah.
I was unhappy doing 7th grade math homework last night.
You might want to chain that computer down to your desk so you don't start throwing it around the room.
Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm hearing the sound of things hitting the walls here. Let us go on. Of course, correlation is not causation. This data could indicate that being married with children tends to make people happy, or that happy people tend to get married and have children. Either way, for most people, getting married is the first step to having children, and marriage is becoming less frequent. 25% of 40-year-olds have never married, according to a Pew survey. In 1980, that figure was 6%. Unmarried rates are higher among men, who are also significantly more likely than women to want children in the first place. Okay, are we getting anywhere?
Can we get past this uber selfishness that all of life is about making me happy? Life is not about making me happy. Life is about me blessing other people for the glory of God. If life is about making me happy, I have got to be the most selfish thing on the planet. And I can think of a lot of things that I don't want to do to make me happy.
Well, and that's the thing. When you do that, to the degree that you do that, I mean, Christ said it is more blessed to give than receive. So when you do live a life that is less self-centered, you find that you end up having more joy.
Yeah, works that way.
Well, that's our topic today, and I got to take a break here, but we will come back to this, and there's some other important things we want to talk about as well on the program today, so stay with us on the Public Square.
We will be right back for more on the Public Square. Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the Public Square.
Now in the Public Square to continue his recitation of the Washington Post, here again is Dave Zanotti.
Among whom there are at least 2 subscribers at the table. We don't ask people what they subscribe to, nor what party they're a part of, or how they vote.
I volunteered it. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. And there's some interesting articles there. I read an article today that talked about a Baptist church and their recovery efforts in Western North Carolina. I thought it was a great article. So some good things there.
We return to the Post editorial page, an editorial written by the newspaper, and it goes on to say this: today, having children is a choice rather than an expectation, and more women are deciding that the trade-offs are too great in light of competing life goals. If you can't have it all, which many women feel they can't, then a choice must be made, and having children comes to be seen increasingly as a zero-sum consideration. The paper goes on. This is progress. Expanding the range of choices available to individuals is what makes a free society free. Americans should not idealize a past when women were pressured into marrying unimpressive men or shamed for pursuing their careers.
I think that's the saddest paragraph in the whole article. You know, when the assumption is that women who marry unimpressive men. I didn't. I married someone I was extremely impressed with.
There's a lot of finger pointing going around the table right now.
And those of us that know your husband uniformly agree. No, Jeff may not comment. You may not comment this entire section, Jeff.
Let me finish. I don't even know if the person who wrote this article has ever been married or has ever had children. But,
Melanie, this is the joint opinion of all the writers of the Washington Post editorial board.
So maybe out of 10 people, 2 of them are married. Who knows?
I don't know.
Who knows what the perspective is coming into the article? But my point
Melanie,
is,
just remember something. Wait, excuse me. I'm sorry. This is progress. Okay, this is progress.
They said it right there. Progressively sad, because when you enter into a relationship that's a lifelong commitment, not a contract, but a commitment, then you are going to learn things about yourself that you didn't know before. It's the same thing happens when we have children. I learned more about myself as a person and hopefully improved as a person as the Lord taught me things through parenthood that we would have never learned outside of having children. This is saying progress is to Americans should not idealize a past when women were pressured into marrying unimpressive men. I just think that's that is such a misogynistic statement that women are too stupid to find someone who's impressive to themselves. I just feel very bad about that last paragraph that you read. It just makes me sad.
For those who are grinding their teeth saying, please pull this plane up before it crashes.
Seriously.
Why are you continuing on in this conversation? Let me just make an explanation. One, I think it's very important for people to watch us read an op-ed piece, which is something we do every single day and have for years and years and years, by no less a paper than the Washington Post, one of the 2 or 3 noted papers of record in the United States of America. And this is not some author trying to get an edge on a book or make a splash. This is the op-ed board. This is the editorial board of the Washington Post. And if you're thinking to yourself, this makes absolutely no sense, guess what? You're right. There comes a point in time in which you say, what on earth are these people talking about? And you realize that they're just in a game of gibberish. They're playing ping pong. Have you ever watched somebody play ping pong against a wall? One player ping pong? That's what this is. They're just banging the same ball off the same wall and making absolutely no sense. Today, having children is a choice rather than an expectation. Okay, number one, I don't know how you'd substantiate that upon historical research. That just happens to be an opinion and they're entitled to it. And more women are deciding that the trade-offs are too great in light of competing life goals. Boy, you'd have to really interview a lot of people to be sure of that, but maybe the Pew Research they have makes that as a conclusion. And then they make an application. If you can't have it all, which many women feel they can't, newsflash to the world, who can have it all? Excuse me, are we dealing with an editorial board that is so blatantly out of touch with reality that they actually think in this life you can have it all? Okay, I remember feeling that way when I was about 12. And then my dad said, get a job. And things began to change very quickly. All right, very quickly. If you can't have it all, which many women feel they can't, then a choice must be made. And having children comes to be seen increasingly as a zero-sum consideration. That statement means I have no idea what that means. I think I know what a zero-sum gain is. I think it's a kind of a term that we're used in culture for sort of a meaningless construct. But then having children comes to be seen as meaningless. Okay, but now wait, the very next line. This is progress. Stop the presses. Thank you, Washington Post. And herein, out of the heart, the mouth, or in this case, the pen speaks. Progress is the religion of the godless equation of the West. Progress is the absolute unifying virtue. If we are moving forward, then we must be right. It doesn't matter if we're moving forward, going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
All that matters
off a
is
cliff.
that
you're
doesn't move.
progressing off a cliff.
A cliff,
And
right.
and this is the thing I do appreciate about it. They're at least acknowledging the raw numbers. They admit in the opening paragraphs that we are progressing off of a birth rate cliff, but they're still calling it progress
and choice.
This is progress. They admit, they said it all. And for that, I am incredibly grateful, because you could read this op-ed. If I had to say to people, you want to have one opinion, one editorial, excuse me, when I made a mistake again and called it an op-ed. This is an editorial board piece, and there's a big difference. If you wanted to have one editorial that would explain the progressive worldview as it relates to societies and to the health and welfare of families and the progressive economy, just take this one, because they'll tell you what it is. This defines progress. Expanding the range of choices available to individuals is what makes a free society free. Okay? Here's another big mountain in their conclusions. Let's see it again. Expanding the range of choices available to individuals, is what makes a free society free. Is that true?
No, it's not true.
Is that code language for abortion?
Yeah. I thought the guarantees of freedom of speech and freedom of religion is a free society. Yeah. I didn't know choosing not to have children is equated with a free society.
That's 1984 level newspeak.
Yeah.
That slavery is freedom. That's what that is. You can be a slave to your career.
You're talking about 1984.
Yes.
You're not. Excuse me, Alan. You're talking about book Orwell. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, wasn't that one of their slogans was slavery is freedom? So they're basically saying the ability to commit societal suicide is freedom. That seems backwards.
When you said 1984, I immediately went to a Burger King commercial. Okay,
have it your way.
Because this is exactly. This is the Burger King philosophy of life. This is welcome to American consumerism at its ultimate. As long as you have more choices, would you like fries with that? Then we're succeeding as a society. That just having more choices is what free societies are all about, all for. Really.
And children are a product or a commodity then.
At this point in the game, I think that's a logical conclusion, Jeff. I just don't even see where children are even involved in this. I can't get over the unimpressive men who somehow kept making all these beautiful catches of women. It's like Americans should not idealize a past when women were pressured into marrying unimpressive men. Okay, or shamed for pursuing their careers.
Wait a minute. Didn't we all marry up though?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
Yes, my wife married an unimpressive man. I will admit that, yes.
Show me a man heading into his wedding day saying, bet she's really impressed with me.
And if he does, he'll soon learn otherwise, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Well, to try to make up ground now, they go on. But just as people shouldn't be pressured by circumstances into having children, this is a great Obamaism, by the way. This is how Barack Obama speaks all the time. Because he's going to tell you something that we completely agree with, but he's going to start with a but. But just as people shouldn't be pressured by circumstances into having children, we all agree, they shouldn't be dissuaded from it either. Okay? Social expectations to engage in helicopter parenting might make having kids seem like a task only available to those with unlimited time and resources. Zoning regulations that limit housing density, including in-law suites, create impediments to multi-generational housing, making childcare harder. Major cities have become increasingly childless places. If more of your neighbors and peers are single or childless and seem to be enjoying their lives, then this will likely temper your own enthusiasm about having kids. I'm lost. Where are we? We just talked our way right back into a corner.
Well, it seems like the opposite of what everyone's parent ever told them was quit looking at what the neighbors are doing and just do the right thing.
As philosopher Jennifer A. Ferre writes, marriage and parenthood are leaps of faith that require individuals to go from thinking and choosing for me to thinking and choosing for we. A leap of faith isn't easy.
Let's take a break. And hopefully computers or radios are not flying out the window right now, as happens in Alan's home, apparently. But stay with us on The Public Square. We are online as well, as always, at thepublicsquare.com.
Have you had a chance to listen to the Kids on the Square episode, Career Day?
I'm going to prove that the President of the United States isn't the most important job in America.
Ha! There's no way.
Join us for discoveries.
What's all the fuss about this building today?
55 of the most important, influential, well-educated, and bravest men in the United States are in that room right now, deciding the fate of our nation.
A wackadoo review.
My favorite granny is Bingo. Yes. And Billy being grannies.
And plenty of laughs.
Yes! Victory! Oh, let's go. High five. High five. High five.
Don't push it.
Okay.
Kids on the Square aims to bless, encourage, and educate the next generation of American children by creating resources for families to connect and communicate in this digital era. So what are you waiting for? Grab a friend, share this episode with your family, and join us today at Kids on the Square.
Spreading the light of liberty across the land. Now back to the public square.
Back with you on the Public Square today with Dave Zanotti, Alan C. Duncan, Melanie Elsey, Jeff Sanders, and Rob Walgate. I'm Wayne Shepherd. And Dave, in a moment, we're going to talk about the comments in the Washington Post editorial, but you have something else?
First, just let me crash the plane. Marriage and parenthood are leaps of faith.
Which will depopulate the world more. We can't have that happen.
Leaps of faith that require individuals to go from thinking and choosing for me to thinking and choosing for we. A leap of faith isn't easy. But government could still seek to make the decision to have children easier for prospective parents through ensuring access to decent childcare, investing in high-quality education, boosting monetary assistance such as the child tax credit, permitting the construction of more and more densely built homes. Policies such as these would ease burdens on stretched families and promote healthy child rearing, making them worthwhile, regardless of whether they also supercharged American fertility. And then we're out. That's it. The plane has hit the runway. Now, for those of you that are still looking for the airsick bag, yes, we can understand. I think the endless newspeak of meaninglessness and back and forth is a confession that is actually worth having endured these many minutes, for which I apologize.
It's about to get worse, too, by the way.
I think the Washington Post has been pressed by reality, by all of the alternative media sources that are covering the story that the Post refuses to cover, that is forcing the Post to look in the mirror and say, I can't run away from the numbers. Everybody's saying the numbers, the CDC, the WHO, China, everyone is telling the numbers, and we are completely behind the curve. But if we acknowledge the fact that the problem exists, then I know what these people are going to do. They're going to say, and if you project this out, the safety net's going to collapse, because government won't be able to sustain what we've got. If we don't change this and rethink our whole idea about the value of children, then suddenly somebody's going to think that abortion isn't such a good idea. This question threatens civilization. And since we, the Washington Post, and we, the progressives who believe in progress, are in charge of everything, we'll have to admit that our ideas are an abysmal, absolute failure. And if we're not careful, 50 years from now, there won't be half of us left. And dear God knows we can't let that cat out of the bag. And so we better come up with enough political drivel that we cover it up, because we can't take it much longer. The pressure is too great. That's what this piece is. It's a cover-up.
And I'll add, the interesting thing to me in that last paragraph, it talked about things, but investing in high quality education, boosting monetary assistance. The thing about it is we can throw as much money at the problem as we want. We've seen that in the United States of America. We have so much money per individual. Money doesn't fix the problem. We know in many instances it's a heart problem. Money's not going to fix this. Throw all the money you want at it. There's got to be more.
Yeah. Well, if we thought the article was rough to get through or painful to read, wait till you get to the comments. So the comment section for this Washington Post article, I like to read the comments every once in a while, just see what people are thinking about this.
There's a lot of them.
There's almost 4,000.
Is that right?
Comments.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah. So this touched a nerve with some folks.
I'll say, yeah.
And so I just wanted to,
especially the unimpressive men, I'm sure.
But we are very grateful, nevertheless.
Yeah. I just wanted to read a quick little sampling of some of the thoughts that are in there and just see what you all think about it and see what our listeners have to say. One person named Brian in the comments here said, here are some ways human well-being can increase. if and when we get our number down below 3 billion. And then he goes on to list all the ways that the world will be improved if we can get our number below 3 billion. You guys know how many people are on the earth right now, right?
Over 7 billion.
Yeah, I think it's close to 8.
Yeah.
So let's get rid of 5 billion.
More than 50% of the human population.
Yeah, so they at least want them to
But
die
wait,
off.
you got me. When we get down to 3 billion,
Yes.
what's going to happen, Alan? We'll have our cake and eat it too.
Yes.
We can have it all. No, what happens?
I'll tell you what he says. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. They just want to kill half the population, but just let them die.
Very Stalinistic.
Sure.
Okay.
He says we can enjoy a fireplace in our suburban home without the certain knowledge that we are ruining the atmosphere. Let's see. He goes, we can go to the beach on a nice summer day.
Yay.
Because there'll be less crowding. This guy literally just doesn't want any people at the beach.
Wow.
Let's see. We will have more and better summer days when we scale back our numbers. Wildlife will start to make a comeback. So it goes into kind of a global warming theme from there. I won't read the entire
So, Alan, are
piece.
they just presuming that this article is about depopulating the earth?
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, they read the article, and then that was what
their takeaway is that the article is presenting the case in favor of depopulation.
Well, and then someone commented on their comment and says, I prefer animals to people anyway. And they go on to detail why they prefer animals to people.
Wow. Well, now it's interesting, Alan, because I also scanned through the columns and the comments, and let's take a look at the logic that you're drawing out of this first comment that you picked, is that human beings are the problem.
Sure.
That human being and that if we need a lot less of them to have a better world.
Right. Here's the thing. We all acknowledge that human beings are, we would call them sinful creatures, fallen creatures. We acknowledge that we all are sinful and fallen and do bad things.
Sure.
So I have no problem with that aspect of it. The problem becomes if you have 3 billion, you're just going to have 3 billion people doing bad stuff. So it's the sin doesn't go away when you get fewer numbers. It doesn't work like that.
It wasn't that long ago that the world was 3 billion people around the time of World War II.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we had some really bad eggs on this planet, like Hitler, Stalin, Mussolini, Tojo.
It's not a pure
That's
numbers
an interesting
game.
point, Jeff. Wow.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, the Washington Post was talking about, let's not go back to some idealized time in the past when, what's this guy doing?
Well, hang on a second.
doing?
Let's make sure. Yeah. Because what we don't want to do is we want to acknowledge, you see the cover up? We want to acknowledge there is a problem, that all of you alternative media sources that are out there talking about this, who happen to have caught on to this, and now suddenly all of the giant statistical authorities in the world are saying the same thing, and China has admitted that they've completely failed and that they're literally losing their population. I mean, we're talking to business people this week who do business in China who are saying that China is now making their forced retirement age higher. They just moved it up for both men and women by 3 years because they don't have any workers.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And the companies are fleeing China. Companies are fleeing China right now. They see the handwriting on the wall. The whole world sees it. The Washington Post wants to keep their finger right in front of their eyes and saying, I don't see this. I really don't see it. But now they're going to admit it, even though it means they have to admit an argument they've been running away from for a generation. And now it's all coming true because it sounds too much like something that would be said with the theme from the Waltons playing in the background that families are a good idea. You know what that sounds like? It sounds way too much like the book of Genesis.
Uh-huh.
That human beings were placed here for a reason, and God blesses families. He blesses everybody, but he wants us to know that we're supposed to grow down here, that that's a part of why we're here. Now, as soon as I say that, I am painfully aware that there are people who pray every day and every night to have children and are unable to do so.
Yeah,
I understand that. Let's not forget that George Washington, the father of our country, was unable himself to have children. So it's not like America hasn't afforded a space for that, but it doesn't mean we have to be anti-family. And see, what the Post is admitting is down deep inside, They're not crazy about the family anymore, but their way's not working.
Let's pause right there. Ellen, I know you've got another comment from this Washington Post editorial. We'll come back to that after this break. You are listening to Public Square. You can listen online if you like, thepublicsquare.com, or with our smartphone app as well.
Right back for more on the Public Square.
Back with you in the Public Square now. And Dave Zanotti, I just got to ask you, does this mean that you want an apology from the Washington Post? You want them to write you a letter? You know, what are you asking here?
saying that for all these years that they've ignored this, we've been right and they're wrong.
Your subscription means so much to us that we're going to admit that you are right and we are wrong. Huh?
The next thing what they are likely to say is, gee whiz, we just figured out if there's only half as many people, we might have half as many subscribers. Oh, wait, we already do.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, wow.
Okay. All right.
Half as many people shopping at Amazon, you know? So.
Oops. What are we going to do with that? Okay. So this is really what we're talking about. This is about as much of a example of a change of mind that we are likely to ever see from any of the towers of progressivism. And you'll notice, though, that right in the middle of it, they've got to bring out their worship sticks and say, this is progress, this is progress, this is because they can't walk away from the idea that the godless equation of progressivism has holes in its application, that it isn't perfect. It doesn't always work. And they're caught not just on a little thing, they're kind of caught at the end of human society thing. Because if there's no people, there's no cultures, there's no countries, there's no money, there's no productivity. Alan, let's go back to comments.
Yeah, we're not going to read all 4,000, are we?
No.
Okay.
On this extended edition of the Public Square.
Yeah, that'll be the director's cut. Okay. No, I do want to read. I think it's important to read the comments just to kind of get a pulse on what are readers thinking? What are they saying? And so this is one person says, talking about the surveys within the piece. I wonder if the women with kids were asked if they were happy. I've known people who aren't mad that they had kids, but in their hearts, if they were to do it over, they wouldn't have kids. But you can't say that or you get judged, even in a survey. I want to pause there. What do you all think of the beginning of that comment? There's a little bit more to it, but what do you guys think about that?
Oh, you get judged no matter what you do.
Sure. I'm biting my tongue again. Show me a parent who hasn't quietly, when it was absolutely certain no one else was hearing, saying, how did I get into this mess?
Well, yeah. Well, like in It's a Wonderful Life, and he says, why do we have to have all these kids, right? You know, I mean, I've said that 100 times, right? But I wouldn't trade them in for anything.
Well, that's the thing. I don't think people actually mean it. You know, I don't know anybody who really wishes they could go back in time and not have their kids. I don't know anybody like that. Maybe this person needs better friends. I don't know.
I think it also gets back to the selfishness we talked about before. I mean,
exactly.
When you do make the decision to have children, you are going to have to make some sacrifices. And in the long run, those sacrifices are worth it. Are you going to want to throw things in the kitchen doing 7th grade math homework? Of course you are. Because you don't understand it anymore when you're in your 40s.
You're the math guy. If you don't, what hope do I have, Rob? You're math guy.
But
you need a tutor?
For sure.
Melanie, you commented in some of our email exchanges on this piece. You reminded us of a scripture that says, children are a blessing of the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
People know that. They really do. And like everything else in this fallen world, nothing's easy. And like everything else in this fallen reality, you can't have it all. And people have the right to make their choices. I get it. But what this article is really explaining is that the choices that are being made are putting us as a country out of business. Because if you don't replace yourself, you disappear. It's just that simple.
You're right. It has society ramifications in the points that they're making, but in the unstated points they're also making, it has generational ramifications. Because if you don't have children, you'll never experience the blessing of grandchildren.
Right.
You know, I like I said earlier, I think I've said previously on a different broadcasts, we aren't raising children to be independent adults. We're raising the parents of our grandchildren. If we don't have that generational vision, then we're missing the point behind a lot of scriptural principles. I just think that the article doesn't take it that direction. It doesn't even consider those perspectives, and that's short-sighted.
Well, and it leads us staring at the same cliff. We may have paused for a moment or slowed down, but we're still heading toward the cliff because the science doesn't lie. This is a case in which science has caught the editorial board of the Washington Post, and they're trapped in a corner by science, and they can't get out. So they're coming up with some other way to try to what we call whistle past the graveyard, because the graveyard's coming, and so it's just hard to come to terms with reality. We're watching the editorial board of the Washington Post get mugged by reality. And we've all been there. We've all been mugged by reality.
It doesn't seem that they have the philosophical, I wouldn't even say theological, they don't have the philosophical underpinnings to process the data in a way that's helpful or meaningful. That's the problem.
That's a really good point, Alan. Yeah. That's the truth behind this whole perspective that we've been talking about.
And is it because they can't handle the conclusions if they do?
Are you saying they can't handle the truth? Can't handle the truth.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
This is why I wish there were names attached to this. I get that it's a tradition. Yes. People write editorial. I get it. But it would be nice if a name was there. Then we could know who wrote this, what their worldview is, what their life experiences are. But we don't know that. But it seems like they've grown up taking in all this anti-human nonsense from the past generation that you can't just say people have worth, have value inherently. They can't just say that. And that's the problem with the piece.
I think it also stems, it's a heart problem. It's a matter of the heart. And there's a spiritual solution to it, which of course they don't want to deal with that either. But it stems from the idea that I am entitled to a pain-free life. I am entitled to a stress-free life or an unburdened life. No, you're not.
And there are even strains of Christianity that try to peddle that sort of nonsense.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. That I can, name it and claim it and all that kind of nonsense. But you have to change the heart that, no, I'm not entitled to a pain-free, stress-free, unburdened life. And no matter what I do, there's going to be those things happening. So why don't I have children who will help me with burdens and with stress? I can bless them. They can bless me. We can be together in this world. I've told my children several times, look, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, except for this. We're going to be there together. We're going to do this together instead of being alone.
We sometimes forget the premise of the creation of humans. When God had a conversation with himself in the Holy Trinity and said, it's not good for man to be alone. That's the whole beginning of this concept of family and having children. God didn't have to make it this way. He knew that he had created us with the capacity for fellowship and for love because he made us like himself. And so when we decide that we're going to frustrate that process, we have to come to terms with a whole lot of things on the inside of us that keep saying, isn't there a better way than that? So I think this is the wrestling of the Washington Post, for whom we pronounce total non-judgment. They have every right to their opinion and to the lifestyle choices that they choose. And they have every right to call all the rest of us as unimpressive as we may be, because we could probably unimpress them a lot more than we already have. This isn't just wailing away at a group of people who are nameless. What it is it's talking about ideas and where do they come from and how are we fooling ourselves in this culture?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, Wayne, what's significant about this is that this discussion about replacement of population is a very large portion of the conclusion of the book Abortion in America.
Right.
Instead of fighting this question out at the micro level, which is done so often, we roll the camera out toward the end of the publication and say, what is the macro question about a population being able to survive? Now, this is not to say, when you look at the numbers on abortion right now, this is not to say that eliminating abortion, which is not going to happen, would suddenly solve the population crisis. But it is to acknowledge that the way we think about children influences the way we think about abortion, and the way we think about abortion has a lot to do with how many people are going to be here next year.
Well, this Abortion in America report, and we're going to get after it in just a few moments here, is so critically important right now. So you stay with us. If you can't, the rest of this program is online at thepublicsquare.com, and we will talk about this report, available to you right now online and in print. So that's next on The Public Square. And we're back with this edition of The Public Square, and thanks for your support of the American Policy Roundtable. It makes things like what we're going to talk about here for a few minutes so critically important and so helpful to have your support. Abortion in America, research of the American Policy Roundtable, now available online, Dave. You can read the report online, but you can also ask for a printed copy. And either way, I think this is something we need to read, to consume ourselves, and then to share with other people. So let's talk about it.
The publication is 40 pages in print. It is available, and we only ask you to send some form of a suggested donation with you. We're not selling it at a certain price. We don't sell these things. We give them away, but we would appreciate the help, because when you see a full 40-page book with full color and a long amount of research, it would be appreciated to at least help us to cover the shipping on this. And to tell you the truth, it costs about $5 to ship a book through the mail today before you get to the cost of the book.
Well, this didn't just spontaneously combust, did it? It had to come from somewhere. Somebody put a lot of effort into this, and I know who.
And we're very grateful to the people who helped finance that research. The individuals, no big company, wasn't any foundation, wasn't somebody with an axe to grind at some level. And the other thing about the book is it's not an advocacy piece. It simply lays the platform of facts. I think the facts are so compelling in this booklet that they're going to force more editorial boards to have to come to terms with the questions that are being raised. Because these are substantive questions about public policy and the future health of a society. And abortion is one of the pieces of this puzzle. And so I think Abortion in America will help dramatically. I mean, give you one thing that we keep saying over and over again. This is, in this political season, abortion is the number one issue that's out there in the electoral trail. Now, you say, wait a minute, I haven't heard about it. I'm sick of hearing it on the Public Square. Well, we love you guys. Could you change the subject, please, before I change the dial? Look, if you got to change the dial, you got to change the dial. We're not doing this to make listeners happy, because we're not selling subscriptions to anything here. What we're trying to do is to tell the truth. And if you live in one of about 10 or 11 states, all you're hearing about right now is abortion. If you live in Florida, you live in Montana, you live in Wisconsin, you live in Arizona, you live in Nevada, New York, all you're hearing about is abortion.
Because it's on the ballot.
And the abortion industry is using it as the most important wedge issue that's out there. So if you have the luxury right now of not hearing anything, you're tired of hearing this, have a little compassion on the people who really need better answers, because they're being bombarded in the political process.
Yeah. Can I point out just one thing about this report? I'm looking at the online edition right now. There is basically an index of what's in this report. It's under the tab Insights. The stats, the reasons, the state laws, the hard cases, the emerging technologies, the model, the impact on children, and what we talked about today, the population crisis, what happens with low population. These are some of the titles of the sections of this report, just to give you an idea how comprehensive it is.
Well, there's a scripture that says there's a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the way therein is death. I mean, the human race carries a cosmic death wish within it, and it comes from the fall of Adam. And there's always the temptation of saying there is no hope and none of us should be here. This whole place would be better off without us. I mean, everyone has the right to that opinion if they want it. But there is a whole nother story out there that begins in the book of Genesis that I think makes a lot more sense. Rob, you've been trying to get in here for 5 minutes. Go.
No, it's just as we compiled all the statistics we did for abortion in America, they were eye-opening. They were alarming. And that's the first thing I hear when I share it with other people is they know that when they read those statistics and where we gathered the data and the information from, and most of it coming from the abortion industry, I think they're blown away because it kind of walks away from the narrative that we've all been led to believe when it comes to those statistics, especially when you hear politicians talk about abortion bans and they use that word ban freely. And we know that's not a reality of things that happen. And while it's become a divisive wedge issue, well, I guess it's always been a divisive wedge issue, but the way it's being used and portrayed, especially when you think about United States Senate races, and the reality of it is people running for the U.S. Senate are not going to vote on an abortion bill, no matter who becomes president.
Even on a state-to-state basis, keeping in mind that we have 10 states with ballot issues on the abortion issue, the state-to-state perspective or the state-to-state battles, there are myths in this booklet that are busted because there are politicians who want you to believe that late-term abortions aren't happening anywhere in the country. Well, that's not true. And we know that's not true. And they know that's not true. But yet they're perpetuating a myth intentionally to sway voters. These states that are strategically placed in terms of the complete electoral college picture on the presidential election, in my opinion.
And they're spending a phenomenal amount of money to dominate all the messaging altogether. But some of the messagings you can't bury with money, like this question of the survival of the population.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that America's going in the wrong direction has gone in the wrong direction long enough that if we don't have an immediate change in our thinking on this, we're heading exactly where China's going now. And it's just it's not centuries, it's not generations, it's decades. It's coming that quickly.
And this truly is a research report. Tell me the thinking that went into this, that it's not here's what we think and what we believe the Bible says about this.
Well, it's not an advocacy position simply because there's so much that is just fact-based in the last 50 years that we've missed. Most people, including us, have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be honest and say, sometimes we were making arguments that don't make sense anymore because things have changed. And we, on top of that, we don't know the facts. For example, a lot of people have said for years, if we could just convince a woman in a crisis pregnancy that this is a child, that she'd keep the child because, I mean, motherhood means so much to women, and these aren't bad people. These are just people who are in trouble. We need to give them a bigger understanding of what this is. This isn't a blob of tissue. If they knew what was actually going on right now in the development of this child, they'd change their mind. Then you get the statistical data to find out that 60% of the people that are having abortions, 60% of the women already have a child. There's not a question that they know what's inside them. So you have to ask, well, then what is deeper than that? What's the deeper question? Why? And we ask those deeper questions, Wayne, without judgment. We ask the deeper questions. Another point, most people are unaware that in the last several years, 1 out of 4 reported pregnancies in America have ended in abortion. 1 out of 4. That's about 1 million children a year. In other words, if people were choosing life, you have a potential of saving maybe 1 million children's lives a year. And in a population that's not replacing itself, there's room. There's room for those kids. And then you have to ask yourself the question, which one of those kids that would be born might be the one that solves some of the greatest scientific pressures right now that are causing us to want to jump off a bridge? So you see, there's a lot, but those are the questions that we ask, not the conclusions that we draw. And we let people decide for themselves.
I think another advantage of the book is that the research is linked. On the online version, you can click on the footnotes to get to the actual primary source material. And even in the hard copy version, you can still type out the URLs for the footnoted resources. I think even older children, older students can use this as a way to learn the research process.
Excellent.
And I think it's a great way to not have an argument with somebody because it's just the facts. You can interpret them as your worldview indicates and as your conscience indicates or as your pleasure indicates, but it's the facts are still the facts. And Wayne, none of the facts in this book were assembled from pro-life sources so that they would carry within them a certain color of bias. These are just the facts.
Yeah. But it definitely does serve the pro-life community. There's no question about that. To have this research report available, Abortion in America, research of the American Policy Roundtable. Look for it online. Here's where you go, life.aproundtable.org. It's right there, life.aproundtable.org. You can read it, you can request a copy, and I hope you will.
You can send one to the editorial board at the Washington Post.
Yeah, there you go. There's your idea of the day. You get the dollar raise today, Dave. All right. Thank you, everyone, for listening to The Public Square.
The Public Square is a broadcast service of the American Policy Roundtable.